ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शांति. So our weekly, fortnightly class on Vedanta and the science of human possibilities, which is usually held at the Bhavans. We have shifted it to this venue today. We will be having the alternate Saturday Bhavans class as usual, the end of June in the Bhavans, and that will be the last class for for the next 2 months, because Bhavans is closed in July and August. So the classes will continue here from Vedanta Center, but the alternate uh, Saturday class on Vedanta and the science of human possibilities, as we have named it, will continue. Only in the month of August, there will be some changes in the schedule, and all are requested to visit the website for changes, if any. So we'll continue the discussion. We were discussing the causal body. We know that human personality can be scientifically analyzed. The whole human personality, according to Vedanta, can be scientifically analyzed according to the different Upanishads and the different texts on Vedanta in a in two ways, two basic main ways. One is a threefold body classification of the personality, not body, a threefold body or threefold, you may say, personality, which is Sthula, Sukshma, and Karana. That's one way of classification. It's a much more generalized classification, which is Sthula Sharira. We discussed Sthula and Sukshma Sharira in great detail, and we also all discussed what the causal body or the Karana Sharira is. But that is only one way of classification. After this, we will be discussing uh, the classification of human personality according to the fivefold sheaths or fivefold atmas, as they call the Annamaya Atma, Pranamaya Atma, the Manomaya Atma or the Manomaya Kosha. It is also known as sheath, or a level of our personality, which is described as Manomaya Kosha, which is more subtle than the previous two. Then we have Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya. So whether it is a fivefold classification or a threefold, the approach is very scientific. So that's why we have deliberately named this discussion as Vedanta as a science of exploring human possibilities, because human possibilities, the complete personality has various possibilities which have to be analyzed to the extent we can through our mind and applied in our day-to-day life, and all the experiences based on that rational analysis have to be verified, and after verification only we can say that we have a scientific approach to Vedanta. So Vedanta as a science is based on truth. Truth which is not only at the physical, mental, and other levels. It has to cover all the aspects of our personality and all the aspects of our experience. So as you saw, the classification as Sthula, gross, sukshma, subtle, and karana as causal, which we are discussing today. Karana we have discussed in our previous class, but we will just recapitulate. That is based on the three experiences. It's a very scientific way of trying to analyze the personality based on the three basic experiences plus the fourth one, which we'll come to later. The three basic experiences which every human personality undergoes on a daily basis, on a minute by minute basis, is the waking state, the dream state, and the deep sleep state. In between dream states, if you're lucky enough, we go into that deep sleep state while we are attempting to sleep. So, in general, we call it sleep. Western psychology may not agree with this twofold classification of sleeping experience as dream and deep sleep. They will just, depending on the analysis they have made, they will say it is REM sleep and different types of analysis using the EEG and other equipment. They will classify our sleep, dreamless sleep, and sleep with dream into different categories. But basically, in Vedanta, it is either swapna or it is sushupti, deep sleep. Now, how do how does Vedanta define deep sleep? First of all, when we classified the human personality into three, that is Sthula, Sukshma, and Karana, we saw Sthula Sharira or the Sthula personality deals with our waking state. In the dream state, we are in a Sukshma state, in a subtle state, subtle objects, subtle experiences based on old memories, and also the subtle body continues to play a major part. So, according to Vedanta, only in the waking state the Sthula aspect comes into picture, though the autonomous nervous system continues to function in the both the sleep, the dream, and the deep sleep state. It continues to function, and we discussed that also. But still, we have to attribute something to the Karana Sharira. If we say if we classify it according to the threefold classification, which is described by some scriptures and some Prakarana Granthas as Sthula, Sukshma, and Karana, it's very easy to classify it into these three. Each one corresponds to uh, waking, dream, and deep sleep. Now, let us see what happens. Uh, just as the gross body or the Sthula Sharira is the seat of waking experiences, the subtle we saw body is the seat of our dream experiences. The causal body, the Karana Sharira, has been defined as the seat of our deep sleep experience. So we saw what happens in what is the characteristic of a causal body. So in profound or dreamless sleep, what happens? We discussed it, I'm just repeating. All mental operations which lead to dream and dreamlike situations, they cease. Whatever be the reason, the body has a natural mechanism, human personality has a natural mechanism where no thought, no feeling, no imagination, no memory of any kind even, which you see in dream. Dream, there are so many memories which are very active, and though they appear to be disconnected, there is it has something to do with our previous memories. But there is no coherence, as I said. In the waking state, there is more coherence. I would not say full coherence because we see incoherent people even in waking state. They will be daydreaming or they'll be in a half dreamy state. Even while they are waking, they're not always alert. But anyway, in deep, the thoughts, the feelings, even the feelings, the feeling of fear of a imaginary tiger chasing you, and even the legs carrying you as fast as you can, running, and all those things can be experienced. It's a real experience when you are dreaming. So there is imagination, there is feeling, there is thought, and there is, above all, some kind of memory. But all these are temporarily suspended in deep sleep. That is why they say, in the deep sleep, all these things are absent. So there is no question of pleasure or pain. There's no hope, no fear, no love, no hate, and all these things which are responsible for our turbulent mind, that is absent. So the mind gets total rest. The manas, I'm talking of the manas, it gets total rest. And the ceaseless fluctuation, maybe it is nature's way of giving us rest, psychological rest, because ceaseless fluctuation of the mind is suffering. According to Buddha, that is the only reason why we suffer. The suffering begins in the mind and then it is extended to the body. They are independent, or they are dependent. So, whatever be the reason, every personality, because of these ceaseless fluctuations, at some stage, maybe it is self-induced. See, the ceaseless fluctuations are not automatic. You have a major role to play. You have a will, some kind of will with sankalpa which you attach to those imageries or the memories. In the dream also, there is the subtle influence of will. So the will makes you ceaselessly imagine, dream, daydream, form attitudes while you are waking. So the mind is always active. That's why they say it's uh, the ceaseless operation of the manas, which is as material as the prana or even the body, the sharira. They are gross, they are subtle, but they are equally material. According to Vedanta, they are material. They are not pure spirit. The mind is not just spirit. It may be subtle, but it is impacted and it impacts gross Annamaya kosha or the body and also the prana. So this fluctuation, this ceaseless fluctuation of the mind, which can be attributed to the restlessness even in the body while in the waking state. So it's not that it's just purely a subtle phenomena. There is the body, some imbalances, body as in, when I say body, I also mean the prana, the life forces, the five life forces which are supposed to be in harmony, but which are not because of the way we treat our body, the way we treat ourselves, our attitudes. So the mind has an impact on the prana, which again, the prana can be responsible for our disturbed dreams and ceaseless fluctuations of our mind, even while we are in the dreaming state. Though there is less coherence, as I said. So all the varied ideas, the diverse features, the traits that we exhibit in the waking state, some of them we may exhibit in the dream state. Tendencies, all the merits, our judgments, even in the dream we judge. We judge people, we judge things, we judge situations. All of them in the deep sleep state, they merge into a state of, you may say, total passivity. It's not that they do not exist. That is very important to understand. Otherwise, that would be the highest state where all your samskaras have been destroyed and you are enjoying eternal peace. No, unfortunately, it is not. It is just a suspended state of the mind or a complete passivity and uniformity. That is why deep sleep is joyful. Though we uh, you may say we fall into sleep. We don't willingly enter into that state of sleep. We just fall asleep. That's why we use the word he fell asleep. So you have to accidentally, as a result of a lot of intense fluctuations of the mind at some stage gets tired and then just wants to be quiet. So it becomes quiet. So it what happens then? That is more important. So Vedanta says it enters into a causal state. The whole personality enters into a causal state. So in which the functions are not dead. They are dormant and all the properties are remain latent, as in a seed. Seed, all the properties of the tree are latent in the seed, but the moment you plant it and the moment you give it nourishment, the moment you give it water, they will uh, germinate and then a big tree is formed. So, mind, the reason which the scriptures or Vedanta gives is they are temporarily suspended because the mind does not have that power of activation of those. The power of activation means the seed form has to be stimulated. Something has to be stimulatory, or something has to stimulate these latent impressions so that you come into the dream state, then you wake up and then you start more the willpower. I mean, when the will becomes the power of activation, which is the capacity, that sankalpa, that is why they say sankalpa is such an important thing. The moment you make a sankalpa, you can come from dream state to deep to waking state. You make a sankalpa. You want to get up, you have to make a sankalpa. If you see, you may call it unconscious will, but there is the involvement of the will. So when you are just about to get up, it requires a sankalpa shakti, the power of the will or power of activation, as Vedanta says, to wake up, to be in the waking state. So from waking state to dream state, from dream state to deep sleep, right now this journey is going on constantly. And this is an observed fact. Vedanta says don't believe in any book, dogma, theory, or because it is there in the scriptures. It reaches and then it will show that there are many scriptural references which I'll give you. It reaches the very base of the subtle body. Means it is uh, more fundamental than the subtle body, because the dream stops and the causal body, which gives rise to first dream and then waking state because of the power of activation of the samskaras. The mind has the capacity to rise from this seed state of dream. The mind does not vanish. The same mind with which you went to sleep is the mind with which you get up. So that is why Swami Vivekananda, when he was asked if deep sleep is such a wonderful state where everything stops, then why can't it be uh, known as a state of samadhi, where the same things happen, obviously. One difference, I said, the autonomous nervous system is still active. When Sri Ramakrishna entered into samadhi, his nervous system, even the prana stopped, everything stopped. That's a different issue. That is not observed in so very commonly unless one really sees somebody in the state of samadhi. And Mahendra Lal Sarkar goes, a doctor like him goes, is curious because his medicine has not given any explanation for this state. So he has to go and test him. And when he sees that, he simply says, I can't explain. He has to declare, if he sticks to his medical knowledge, the person is dead. But then the difference between samadhi is that these samskaras, they are in a subtle state. They have not been destroyed. The same person with the same tendencies which he exhibits in the waking state before he went to sleep, he will exhibit after he gets up. You can't expect a person going into sleep, an evil person going into sleep, and when he gets up, he will become a saint. No, that never happens. That may happen after samadhi, after realization. the person that goes into that turiya state, or maybe you may say the state of samadhi in yoga, when he comes back a different person, because he doesn't come back with the old seeds of the samskaras that are there. So the causal body, the seeds or the all whatever there is there in the causal body, the constituents of the causal body have to be totally transcended by destruction. So there is a process in yoga which is known as Dagda Bija Avastha. So the Dagda Bija means you burn the seed forever so that it doesn't sprout. They speak of the kleshas there, but whatever it is, the different tendencies, inherent tendencies. In Vedanta, it has many names, the vasanas, samskaras, and all those things. So, but let us not go into that. The simple analysis is in deep sleep, even the ego that is ever ready to assert. Ego gives rise to our dream experiences. Our ego is somewhat inward. Otherwise, if that ego was not there, then we would not feel that we are doing certain things. We always have that feeling. Somebody is scolding us, or even in dream, we see so many things. Somebody, we are interacting with somebody. That ego is there, though it is not very strong as it is in the waking state. But still, in the deep sleep state, that ego goes. And that's the reason why so much of importance is given in Vedanta to reduce the ego. It is not because by reducing the ego you become a good person. It is for one's own survival. The stronger the ego, the more suffering. In fact, Buddha goes to the extent of saying that it is your ego itself which is the cause of your suffering. So the reason why ego has to be reduced consciously in the waking state, and in dream state, of course, we can't do it consciously, but it the waking state efforts will be reflected in our dream state. So the ego disappears. That is one another important characteristics of the karana sharira, or in the deep sleep state. So person apparently loses that strong identification with his self. So he is no longer, and how Brihadaranyaka Upanishad explains that atra means in that state, pita apita bhavati, mata amata bhavati. She may be a mother to someone, but she is no longer a mother when she is in deep sleep. Loka aloka bhavati. The worlds also disappear. Deva adeva bhavati. Veda aveda bhavati. Now, of course, very often this verse is quoted in uh, Tatra Veda Veda Bhavati. Tatra means normally it is meant when when you go into samadhi, when you have spiritual experience, you don't need the Vedas. Swamiji, in fact, quotes this saying that it is meant for a man of realization. He doesn't need books. He doesn't need to prove anything through books because Vedas become Aveda. See, they go to the extent of saying in that state you don't even need the Vedas. It's nothing, it's not a disrespect shown to the Mata or Loka and the Deva, but they simply don't exist. So there is no question of Tatra Veda Aveda Bhavati. Atra, then there are many things. The thief is no thief, steno asteno bhavati. The killer of a noble Brahmin, even a wicked person, at least in sleep, is not wicked. Chandalo achandala bhavati, and all those things. And no monk remains a wrong. Shramano ashramano bhavati. So even a monk loses his identity as a monk. So a hermit is no longer a hermit. Now we saw what exactly is this deep sleep experience. We saw that, but still it is worth repeating. What exactly happens when the being, the personality, resides at the Karana Sharira level? As I said, our whole intention of this discussion of Vedanta is to explore the Vedanta as a science of human possibilities. So we should not stop with the gross. We should not stop with the manas, the highly intellectual mind which gives him the skill to interact, become a good doctor or an engineer. All those things are very good at the Mansik level. But as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Egiye jao, or go forward. Charai Veti, the Vedas say, you go forward, don't stop. See if there are higher levels to be explored. There are other possibilities. So here it says, every day we are experiencing this. So is that not a possibility? So what happens when you go to sleep? We never bother. We just think that, okay, today I had a good sleep or I had a bad sleep, and always struggle to either get deep sleep or just hope that we get good sleep without making any effort to induce that state, because it is difficult even for anyone, for sadhakas also, because don't think sadhakas will have good sleep. When the churning of the mind takes place when one is meditating, in fact there will be more agitation, because if a person is ignorant, he will, all his samskaras are in the potential form and he might get good sleep. The child gets good sleep, he sleeps for hours and hours together, is always in deep sleep. But unfortunately, because of his education, as Swamiji said, he is robbed of his ignorance by the so-called education given by the world around him, and then he loses his sleep. He is in a natural state of blissful ignorance or sleep. But that is not a desirable state, because even in the child, Patanjali says, all the impressions are still latent. So it's better that sooner or later, when the child grows up, when he practices yoga, he has to find out what is in store in the causal body. What are the samskaras that are latent? And when he tries to poke them or tries to do some sadhana to disturb them, temporarily there may be more disturbance. He may lose his sleep. That's why there's no guarantee, because depending on how much of stuff is there in the Karana Sharira, your struggle will be all that more, all the more. So it's not necessary that good sleep is a sign of. In fact, Swami Vivekananda had very little sleep. On Grahana day, when everybody asks for money or some wealth, because they say that is a very auspicious time, Swamiji jokingly said, I will pray for sleep, because that is the one thing he lacked. When he was in Belur Math, somebody asked him, Grahana is the time where if you do japa, the fruits will be, that's what Hindus believe. It will be more. So he said, oh, then I will go to sleep. He said, why are you going to sleep during Grahana? I said, because I lack it. I don't want other things. This is the thing I want. So deep sleep is not something which shows that a person is realized or a person is highly spiritual. In fact, the sleep becomes less and less as one becomes more and more spiritual, because he's trying not to just fall into that state of deep sleep through ignorance, but he wants to attain a state which is far, far superior. We'll come to that. Than the deep sleep state, because now his mind is calm, because all the Karana Sharira, the samskaras or the impressions of the Karana Sharira have been totally destroyed by the process of yoga. In fact, that's the only goal of yoga. Yoga, they say, it is through pratyahara, to dharana, to dhyana. All these methods are just to remove, destroy the kleshas, the pancha kleshas, which are responsible for our suffering. That's why they are known as pain-bearing obstructions. Klesha itself means pain-bearing obstructions. So pain-bearing obstructions, uh, if they are there, the only way is to destroy them. So the goal is to destroy them consciously through the process of yoga, and not just fall asleep, where those pain-bearing obstructions are in, you may say, subdued form, suspended form, waiting to come back when you are dreaming and when you are woken up. They come back because they have not been destroyed. The seeds are still there. They're waiting for some chance to sprout. So that's why they say Dagda Bija, that means you have to burn them. No, it's just an example that is given. So how do you really destroy a seed? By burning them. Then you throw it wherever you want, it will not sprout. So that's the idea. Now, but at the same time, what happens when the person enters the causal body in deep sleep? One thing is confirmed according to the uh, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which discusses this threefold state of human being. He just passes from one to another to another. Deep sleep, dream, waking. The whole life we have been doing only that. There's no fourth state, of course, is there, Turiya, but that is only after realization. But anyway, what happens in the causal body is that they face a, as they in English they call a blank wall. So a blank wall in the sense there's nothing. You don't plan, you don't do anything. Complete inapprehension. You don't even know where you are. That's why Holy Mother gives that example when somebody said, I have not understood how much of spiritual progress I have made. Then she gives an example. Suppose you are sleeping and somebody carries your cot, and when you are fully asleep, when you are not aware what is going on, and puts you in another room without disturbing you, when you get up, you see a new place. You have been transferred to a new place. Similarly, said spiritual practices also, they do not give a hint that you are progressing. You have to just be patient and think, believe in the efficacy of the spiritual practice, so that just as this person who is sleeping, while he is in the state of sleeping, he will not understand whether he has been moved from one room to another. So that is why the nature of that deep sleep or the causal body is complete inapprehension, complete unspecified ignorance. See, when you are in a dream state or when you are in a waking state, you have specified ignorances. For example, I don't know whether this is good to eat, whether I should eat it or not. That's a kind of ignorance because you don't have knowledge of the food stuff that is in front of you. But it is a specified ignorance. Whereas in deep sleep, there's no particular ignorance, there is unspecified ignorance. Means it is not a particular ignorance. All the other ignorances are in seed form, but temporarily he is ignorant of everything. He is ignorant of the bad people, uh, ignorant of the good people around him. He is ignorant of even his own condition, his richness, his poverty. Everything is ignorant of. So it is an unspecified ignorance. But he says, so the person who wakes up from deep sleep, the only thing he understands is, I slept happily. I slept happily. I did not know anything. So if you ask a person who was in very deep sleep that so much of things happened near you, did you not hear? He will say, I don't know anything because I was totally asleep. And you have to believe him because he has not experienced that. So but this is a very important point. We come to the commentary of Shankaracharya on this, on the Vedanta Vivek Chudamani 120 and 121 verse. Shankara has given a nice commentary trying to explain further, because the Upanishads give cryptic sentences. They will just say unspecified ignorance. What does it mean? So Shankaracharya has to explain that. So he Shankaracharya says, what he says, I'm giving you the essence. He says, though the ignorance is unspecified, he actually does not lose consciousness. If he had lost consciousness, he would not have come back into the dream and waking state and said, I had good sleep. How can he know that if his consciousness was some awareness, some consciousness was there? So, even if it loses the capacity of the mind to think, the capacity of the organs, subtle organs as gross organs to really give any input to the mind, still the cognizer of the Karana Sharira is somebody separate. That is how they analyze that there is a soul, there is a consciousness which is independent, which gives a limited consciousness. The consciousness is still there. The body, the human being doesn't lose consciousness. So he says, I mean, he does not lose consciousness, but he says that the cognizer, the watcher, or the person or that entity which was aware of the sleep of the causal body, Karana Sharira, is known as, they call it avidya, Moola Vidya or Ajnana. So that is according to yoga or according to Vedanta also, the primal ignorance. It is also known as, according to yoga, it's not just a primal ignorance, but they accept that avidya, from avidya comes asmita, and then all the three kleshas, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. So the whole of Patanjali's mechanism also accepts avidya, but they don't have share the same connotation. The avidya of we will now stick to Vedanta, not yoga. So this cognizer of the causal body is is of the nature of ignorance, which is again known as avidya or ajnana. So the root of all our fundamental root of a fundamental cause of all our problems, or the root of all our problems, is this avidya, which both yoga and Vedanta accepts. And that avidya is, as it were, it is covering that luminousness or that blissfulness of the soul, Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Chit and Ananda, the experiencer, he is deprived. He gets a little of Ananda that percolates, and he is happy with that. He is very happy, in fact, when he gets up from deep sleep. And he thinks that is the greatest happiness. At least that is the greatest perceivable happiness for us. Till we see that there is a greater state of happiness, he is happy with that, even with the ignorance. And the self luminosity of the soul, the Jivatma, is expressed partially in this deep sleep state, not fully. And that blissfulness, that Ananda, he is vaguely aware that he had Ajnana. When he was sleeping, I didn't know anything. He clearly says, I was sleeping, I didn't know anything what was going on. So the veiling power, the covering power of avidya, according to uh, Vedanta, they call it the veiling power. It covers. It cannot destroy joy, it cannot destroy consciousness, but it covers that consciousness and allows only a little to percolate. That is why it appears as unconscious. And its veiling power, the covering power is there, but its projecting power is not destroyed. It will project as soon as he comes into dream state, he will project the same consciousness. See, consciousness has two powers. One is the covering power. Avidya has two powers. One, it covers knowledge. Another, it prevents the projection. There is a projecting power. Consciousness is like light, for example. The best example that is given is, suppose you cover a light with a vessel. So the veiling power is active. I mean, it is operative. You don't see light, but the light underneath is still burning. The projecting power of the light has not been destroyed by just covering the light temporarily. The moment you remove that avidya, that covering power, veiling power, the projective power shines. Projecting power can never be covered. Otherwise, there's no question. The goal of spiritual life, which is the realization of this eternal consciousness, undivided consciousness, is not possible if it were not there. If the light was not there, then removing the lid or removing the cover will just lead to darkness. But that projection, power of light is hidden, but temporarily it is hidden. So, there is a verse which Shankara actually in his 120 and 120 and 121, uh, he explains this. He says, this undifferentiated, that is avidya, which is discussed now, is Now he gives a beautiful explanation. It is characterized as, this avidya is characterized as the equilibrium of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Now, what do you mean by that? The characteristic of this avidya, Acharya Shankara says, is that sattva, rajas, and tamas are perfectly in harmony. That is why there is no imbalance. The moment you come into dream state or waking state, sattva, rajas, and tamas, the proportion is lost, that harmony is lost. And what we are is because of the combination, permutation, and combination of the gunas. So if sattva is more, we are happy. If rajas is more, we are active. We just want to do something. And if tamas is more, we just like to, we are either depressed or just everything is clouded with ignorance and we just want to sleep. So that equilibrium in deep sleep, temporarily, uh, that undifferentiated avidya has been described as the harmony of the temporarily, even the gunas. Prakriti is made of gunas, the external Prakriti and internal Prakriti. They are made of three gunas. It's a wonderful theory of Sankhya, which is used in yoga and also in Vedanta. They say that this undifferentiated state, undifferentiated state of the three gunas, which is or you may say equilibrium, when everything is in equilibrium, that is the state which is known as the Karana Sharira. So it's a good, in a way, compared to the Sukshma Sharira and the Sthula Sharira, the time we spend in the Karana Sharira is far better, because there the three gunas, we do not become Trigunatita. Trigunatita means to transcend the three gunas. For that, you have to go into uh, Turiya state, the transcendental state, not the deep sleep state. But temporarily, there is harmony. It is like people are always quarreling, and then you say there is a ceasefire. Two wars are going on. And temporarily, you say, let there be ceasefire. Let us not fight for a few days or a few moments. And that temporary relief is known as this deep sleep. So we are torn apart first by our waking state, all the mental problems and the mental fluctuations of the waking state, and to add to that, on another side, the dream state, and then finally the jiva feels that there should be equilibrium, some kind of ceasefire. But it's not permanent. The war will begin the moment you wake up. So he says that Karana Sharira, that daily journey of every human being, is the most, the best he can achieve. So that's why they say if you have good sleep, that means you're doing really well. If you can sleep at will, of course, from a yogic point of view, it is not always like a good because people can feel asleep or fall asleep out of exhaustion, which is because of tamas. That is different. But profound sleep, real profound sleep, is a special state, he says, in which the functions of the mind and organs are suspended. And the second 121 verse, he says, it is also, he has summarized the whole Upanishadic teachings in these two verses. Profound sleep is the stopping or cessation of all kinds of specific cognition in which the mind remains in a subtle form. The specific cognition that this is good, this is bad, this person is good, this person is bad, this is Veda, this is ignorance. So all the judgmental things which we experience in dream state, in waking and also in dream state, are suspended. The specific, it stops. So the specific cognition stops, but the cognition itself, consciousness doesn't stop. The test of this, according to Shankara, says, I did not know anything then. So that's the universal experience. It's everyone, whether one has his gunas in balance, one is realized, or one is an ordinary person. Everybody has equal access to this deep sleep state as and when he gets it. Now, there's one more verse, 171 in Vedanta Vivek Chodamani, where he's again describes Sushupti Kale Manasi Praline. The mind, since it is absorbed, when the mind is reduced, mind it does not vanish. It is temporarily, uh, it goes into a causal state, Karana Sharira. It's a way of, suppose a dog is full of, I mean, you may say, just a crude example, he's very restless or is very, I mean, the gunas are disturbing him. You just put him in a room and lock him. He allows you some peace. The dog allows you peace, but as long as you don't open the door. So it is something like that. The mind is pushed in deep sleep to the causal state and says, now you don't do any mischief, just enjoy your sleep. And there exists nothing for that person temporarily. Everything is there. He is going to wake up in that same world. So that is, he says, he said, I don't need to explain this because it is a universal experience. So you see how even Shankaracharya. Now, again, I mentioned this earlier, but Shankaracharya goes further to explain, or Vedanta, there are other books also which say, how does a person wake up? It's very interesting because we don't know how we wake up. The scientific approach requires to analyze everything. Why do we go to sleep? How do we go to sleep? You have to ask these questions. Why do I dream? What do I dream? Uh, how do I dream? So similarly, he says, as a person wakes up from deep sleep, what happens? Does he get up? He says, I mean, the scriptures say, the mind and organs, the mind, the subtle mind, and the subtle organs, and also the gross organs, which are nothing but expressions of the subtle organs, the indriyas, they call it. The mana and indriya, the mind which is trained by the indriyas, and the skill sets that we have developed. So that's why an engineer comes back, he doesn't forget all the things, all the characteristics of his manas, his trained mind emerge. He doesn't emerge as a fool or a more intelligent person. Maybe sometimes some of his skills, because of proper rest, they are expressed better. But he will be the same person. So they emerge from the causal body. Causal body is a temporary state of suspension. The first to come, this is very important, is the ego. So you get a feeling that without the ego, all the other kleshas or the other samskaras are not activated. It's the ego that gets attached. That's why, as I said, humility is considered to be a virtue because if you handle the ego, the power of the other kleshas become less. So you handle the main klesha, then the other kleshas become powerless because ego gives it all the power. So if you're if a person is wicked, if he becomes somehow by some methodology becomes less egoistic, then he will be less wicked. That's the idea. So the ego consciousness is first to rise, and that is the motive because he has to now come back to his dream state, then go to waking state. Because the functions of the mind and organs, this is important. If that ego is not present, the functions of the mind, it's like the key to activate the mind and the organs. Then you say, oh, my mind. You have to say, oh, I am that so and so. So I am this. So that ego has to be roused. There is a beautiful story in the Ramayana where Hanuman of course was somebody who was so full of humility, and he had no ego. So when he was asked to jump, he forgot that he has the capacity to jump across the ocean. So that ego was had to be activated. See, that is how this verse can be explained. So Jambavan immediately tells him, don't you know you when you were small, you jumped to catch the sun? You have that capacity. You can easily jump. So because there was this lack of ego, his functions of the mind and organs to jump and achieve some task was missing. So they say, I mean, the power to the first the ego. I mean, when you wake up, first the ego, your ego as it was before you went to sleep, that same ego will come up. Then it will activate the organs, and then you will do whatever you like. Uh, the causal body is now, he says, the in the scriptures say that causal body is known as Anandamaya Kosha, Karana Sharira. We'll come to this fivefold classification. Now I'm just saying the blissful sheath, which is the innermost covering, sheath or Atma, because it is known as Anandamaya Kosha because it emits a little of the blissfulness of the self, a little light. You see, you don't see the whole light because that covering is still there, ego is there. It covers the self like a sheath. So during deep sleep, the person not only apprehends or sees unspecified ignorance or avidya, but also perceives indefinite happiness. Though he is not fully blissful, but at least he gets a taste of bliss. This is evident. Shankaracharya in Vedanta Sarai says, or not the author says, that why do you say that deep sleep state is a blissful state? Because he says, everybody says this when he gets up, I slept happily because I did not know anything. That is why ignorance is bliss. Maybe is used to describe the deep sleep state. Why one is, if one is ignorant, of course, it is not a desirable state. One has to be full of knowledge. But at least he says, I slept happily because I did not know anything. I forgot all my enemies. I forgot all my quarrels. I forgot everything. But when the ego again became active, then all those things which were hidden, they came back. So the but here, as I told you, uh, there is a very important passage which we have. I'll just read. It is very important because in Vedanta Sara, which is also a Prakarana Garantha, they in fact say without reading Vedanta Sara, without reading Vivek Chudamani and all this, they are preparatory texts to understand Vedanta. You can't just understand Vedanta by reading the Upanishads. So this very nice verse which says, he says, Sthula Sukshma Prapancha Laya Sthanam Iti Uchyate. See, such a beautiful expression. Sthula Sukshma Prapancha. We have a Sthula Prapancha, that is the waking state. Sukshma Prapancha, the world which we have created in our dream. Laya Sthanam means it is the place of merging, where Laya means temporarily it is not allowed to express. So that is why we are happy, he says. So he says the Ajnana, the Avidya or Ajnana associated with the individual soul is also known as the causal body because it's a causal state of egoism and the rest that is associated with it. If there is ego, there is restlessness. If there is no ego, there is rest. It's as simple as that. It is, then it says, it is also known as the blissful sheath. The Karana Sharira, according to another classification, is nothing but Anandamay Kosha. So when people ask, oh, we understand Annamay Kosha, that is our body, Pranamay Kosha, our living forces. We also understand Manomay Kosha, and to some extent, we also understand Vijnanamay Kosha, which is Buddhi, though the Buddhi is not very easily, it has to be cultivated. So, that is also understandable. But when you say, why you call Karana Sharira Anandamay Kosha, that is being explained because everything subsides. That is one of the main arguments of Buddha. He says, if you want to know the mind, you have to just analyze. What is that makes you happy? It is restlessness of the mind. So what is spiritual sadhana? I said, don't believe in any scripture. You don't even have to believe in, just look at your daily experience. And he found it that way, in a very rational way, that avidya, your ego, your desire, which leads to desire. Desire leads to restlessness. Restlessness leads to suffering. So you take care of suffering, you take care of restlessness, you take care of suffering, and only nirvana remains. So, I mean, you reach nirvana. So, the causal body, people should not think that when one is in deep sleep, he is blissful. So, that is all he has to attain good sleep. No, it is not intrinsically blissful. When all the modifications of the subtle body subside, the absolute bliss of the Atman or the consciousness, Satchidananda, finds a little expression faintly, and it is far, far superior to any experience, joyful experience that he ever experiences in the world outside. So that is why in Vedanta Paribhasha, and I'll try to conclude with this, he says, why, how can you say that experience is higher? He says happiness is also of two kinds. One is relative, another is absolute. Relative is when you get experience when some object is there in the waking state, or even in dream state, you have dream objects. It's a particular manifestation of the total bliss which is behind it, and it is generated by a contact with objects. So, matra sparshastu kaunteya. Very clearly, Krishna tells Arjuna that it is only the bliss that you say is blissful is because of your contact, matra sparseshu, the elements. The contact of the indriyas with the elements gives you a joy, and you think it is ultimate joy, but it is a joy with objects. That is why it is known as relative happiness, and that which does not require any object, that is experienced only when one is free from these objects. So the idea of moksha and mukti as the source of infinite happiness is there. But if a person has never experienced the joy of freedom, how can he tell? Even if you tell a person there's great joy in freedom, but he thinks there is greater joy in bondage. Bondage too, because he has experienced those little bits of joys which he gets through contact with objects. But if we believe, if we have a scripture as our guide, whether it is Gita or whether it is Buddha or whether they say, because they have found it, they have based it on their own experience. So they say contact with objects gives you relative happiness. That is happiness, no doubt. But don't come to the conclusion that is ultimate happiness. There is a far, far greater happiness in freedom. So that is why unconsciously every child wants to be free, but he doesn't know how to be free. If somebody tells him do this, he says, I will not do it. Because he says, who are you to tell me? I want freedom. But that is not real freedom. But the fact that he is yearning for freedom, he wants to do everything, he wants to be just free, is the expression of this. But unfortunately, discipline, lack of discipline is understood as freedom, and then man suffers. Because he said, if I am indisciplined, but he will not get there because there won't be harmony of the three forces, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Only during deep sleep he will enjoy because he is free. He is free from his thoughts, he is free from his logical thinking, he is free from other people. Nobody is there. The tatra veda aveda bhavati. There are no people at all, no objects. Then definitely that is freedom. But this experience goes away, unfortunately. When he wakes up, then again he gets attached, and that is because of the samskaras. So, the threefold body we conclude, and then we'll discuss in the next class the fivefold sheath. The threefold body is one way of classification. It appears to be very simple. Oh, what is there? This dream, deep sleep, and waking state, everyday experience. Tell something new. So for such people, there is a deeper analysis which the Taittiriya Upanishad, different Upanishads, they use different models. The idea is same, but they will teach you in a different way. It's a different methodology. So the threefold body, according to Vedanta, is nothing but a simplistic way of explaining the fivefold body. Now, what that fivefold body is in great detail, the five sheaths, I'll just give a list. Physical, Annamaya Kosha, vital sheath, Pranamaya Kosha, the mental sheath, the Manomaya Kosha, intelligent sheath, the Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is the most important because from Vijnanamaya Kosha, our spiritual life begins. Till then, we are just animals or maybe refined animals or lower human beings. Still, the Annamaya, Pranamaya, and Manomaya Kosha, everybody has to some extent. Even animals have. In fact, they can have stronger Annamaya Kosha than us. They can have stronger Pranamaya Kosha. They have wonderful physical strength. So we can't be called superior because of the lower three koshas. Our superiority lies in the fourth and fifth koshas, which we'll discuss. Taittiriya Upanishad uh, very nicely shows the relationship. The whole of Taittiriya Upanishad is this kosha vichara or the vichara of the five selves. They call it Annamay Prana, Manomay, Pranamay Prana, Pranamay Atma, sorry, Annamay Atma, Pranamay Atma. Atma means the personality, not the Supreme Atma. Then Vijnanamaya Atma, then Anandamaya Atma, that is the last after Vijnanamaya. So the five sheets, just as we analyzed the three sheets and correlated it with the three experiences, waking, dream, and deep sleep. So also these five have its corresponding correlations, which we'll see. What is Annamaya Atma? What role it has to play in our development? What is Pranamaya Atma? How does it lead to diseases and health and all those things? And also a sick mind and or a healthy mind. Prana is responsible for both. And how Manomaya Kosha impacts us. How the training of the Manomaya Kosha. And finally, awakening of the Buddhi. So one of the topics in our retreat, it has been, three themes have been given in the poster if you see on 8th and 9th. One of them is awakening of the Buddhi, because that is when spiritual life begins. So that deals with Vijnanamaya Kosha and Anandamaya Kosha alone. So there will be one topic based on that. It starts from, suppose you are very well developed in Annamaya Kosha, strong body, strong mind, strong capacity to do everything, highly skilled, complete all-rounder, physically, mentally, but still, and people think that is the goal of life. Is such a talented person, such a healthy person, such a fit person, but then spiritually is still a pygmy because he has not explored the other two levels. That will be the subject of discussion in the next class. Other questions? Hmm?
No questions up to now.
Any question? Yes, yes.
Maharaj, that all the five seeds and also that relation between that awakening state, the sleep state and the dreaming state, all can be witnessed by the consciousness only.
Yes, the pure
That is
consciousness.
the properties of this consciousness.
Pure consciousness, yeah.
And the deep sleep also, the consciousness is also.
Yeah, it is awake.
Active.
It is active.
Yeah. Because he is the witness of the all
Yeah,
this
yeah.
conscious activity.
So consciousness is primary, but we are discussing these koshas because we have not even reached that conscious level. We have to pass through these sheets in a progressive way. So that is why we call the science of human possibilities. So our human possibilities begin with these various layers of consciousness which you observe. That's the idea. Though it is primary, we can't neglect, we can't afford to neglect the lower koshas, because no matter how idealistic we are, no matter how much of Vedanta we listen, especially Advait Vedanta, where you go on hammering into somebody's head that you are pure consciousness. You know, people have that tendency, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham, Shivoham. You go on saying 100 times. The moment a needle pricks your Annamaya Kosha, your Shiva vanishes. Then we go back to the Annamaya Kosha. That's why they say be practical, go slowly. First, it takes a whole lifetime to reach the Buddhi level. It's a very, I'm not discouraging, but in spite of all our yoga and all, yeah, we can definitely have a healthy body. We can have wonderful control of the prana and be very successful by wonderful skill development, highly intelligent, successful personality. But yes, that is two-thirds of our progress. But the main progress starts when the consciousness is reflected more, because it is reflected more in the Vijnanamaya Kosha and Anandamaya Kosha, the soul will not be happy. So a well-developed personality still will want to progress further and further and reach higher and higher levels. So that is why we name this science as the science of human possibilities. So our possibilities are not exhausted till we reach that consciousness. But the journey is very, very difficult in the sense we will be very, very, very lucky. I'm repeating this, very, very, very lucky that we get a chance in this life to awaken our buddhi. Forget the Anandamaya Kosha. Vijnanamaya Kosha also, if we perceive and enjoy or maybe live in that plane for a comparatively long length of time, transcending this thing. I'm not saying the lower three. That is why they are discussing with so much of patience. Annamaya Kosha. Why? Because asana. What is asana? It is just dealing with your Annamaya Kosha in such a way that it makes the mind steady. That's the only value of all the asanas that we do, unfortunately.
Sthiram Sukham Asanam. Yeah.
Sthiram Sukham Asanam. So you want sthirata, you want happiness. I mean, steadiness to go further. That's the only thing. Asana, beyond that, it has therapeutic value, it has medical value, but it will give rise to a good Annamaya Kosha. That's all.
Yeah.
So prana is to be controlled. That is pranayama. Pranayama doesn't mean only breath. It means many things. Control, balancing of the pranas. That is good to keep your not only body in order, in good health, but also the mind. Because people say they can't control their mind because they can't control their prana. They can't control their prana because they don't have sthirata in the body. So asana and pranayama are just stepping stones to the real yoga. The real yoga doesn't even begin with the pratyahara. You teach yoga. So pratyahara itself is still a stepping stone.
Yeah.
It's only when you come to the dharana and dhyana, then you say that you have entered the you have just passed the kindergarten and started your school of yoga. So that's why I'm saying very responsibly that uh, to enter the to develop the Vijnan or explore all the possibilities of the Vijnanamaya Kosha is not only the beginning of spirituality, but it is uh, very rare. So that is why most of us are happy with the three koshas. If our child is highly intelligent, very healthy, that's the goal of life. What else do you want? Well settled, isn't it? The question of the other two koshas doesn't arise in a majority of the human beings. That is why they call such people, in Gita says, I'm not saying, Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, it is a creative minority. That's why he tells Arjuna, don't spread this teaching to all because nobody will appreciate it. They are happy with the three koshas, let them be happy. The higher koshas, if you want to explore the higher possibilities of human personality, then he says such people are rare. And out of that, the people who really explore and find the solution or reach the conclusion are still rare. So, not that he was discouraging Arjuna, he was saying, now you fight your battle, deal with the lower three koshas. When you come to a stage in life when you really want to do something spiritual, which he did after he retired, after maybe after that he realized that Krishna had said some wonderful things, which now I can contemplate upon. In fact, he had forgotten. There is a small Gita, which Anu Gita, which Krishna has to repeat. He tells him, oh, you gave a wonderful message on the battlefield, but I've forgotten everything. Can you repeat it? So Krishna said, no, 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 I can't. I will not repeat. I'll just repeat the essence. And then he gives a shorter version of the Gita. Mahabharata is, this incident is there. It is known as Anu Gita, where he says, it's now I can't repeat all what I said. Whatever was said was said. Whatever you took seriously, you took, and you fought your battle. And finally, now you have come to a stage where I can give you the little bit of essence of those scriptures. So that's the idea. Means though consciousness is behind everything, as you said, and it is very easy to accept this fact, especially if you are listening to talks, Advaita and pure consciousness, repeating Chidananda Rupa Shiva, I am Shiva, Shiva. But the moment something happens, then that Shiva goes down to the Annamaya Kosha. That is the problem. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Swamiji, you said ego is a suffering, right?
Yeah.
So
It's the cause of suffering.
ego is the cause of suffering.
Yes.
So suppose.
No, I didn't say the scriptures.
Sorry. Yeah. The scripture says that ego is cause of suffering. Right?
Yes. Yes.
What if even we are quiet and somebody is trying to focus and then try to encouraging hurting our ego? How to deal with?
No, if the ego is there, this problem comes. If nobody can hurt your ego, if your ego is, so insignificant for you that you don't care. People who are just having this, they call it Sakshi Bhav, they are not bothered because they consider it to be insignificant to react because they're still at that's why I said you have to understand the lower personality, the lower aspects of human personality, Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha and Manomaya Kosha. Manomaya Kosha is that aspect, that part of the mind. It's not the whole mind, it's that part of the mind which is reactive. It is just a slave to the senses. If somebody speaks ill of you, you just react.
Yes.
But a sensible person will think, he'll say, should I react to everything that is thrown at me? If you are wise, if the Vijnanamaya Kosha has been awakened, then you pause.
Even this applies for other people or even
everyone.
There, you see, who is talking to us?
See, it applies to everyone, those who want to apply. It may not apply to them. Because if a dog barks, a sensible person will not bark at the dog. It is an inferior animal. Its nature is to bark. Isn't it? You don't react by barking. If you do, then maybe people will consider that he is mad. Isn't it? It is a very crude level of reacting to everything that is thrown at him. But people like Buddha, for example, he was criticized so many times, many things. He just did not accept. When he was not getting angry, somebody said, how can he insult you and you keep quiet? He said, it's very simple. If I don't accept what he says, then there's no question. Then he had to give an example. His Ananda was his disciple. So he said, if you consider, if your ego attaches to that curse, then you get upset. But if you allow it to just, your ego says that whatever he utters, I am not going to react because my ego is in my control. Only when it is not under your control, your ego rises and then you scold him and then both quarrel. So you are not in control of his ego. Isn't it? We are not responsible for everything.
We can't satisfy their ego.
Never. The problem, basic problem in human relationship is we try to satisfy everybody's ego. We just have to bother about our ego. Because how can you control somebody else's ego? He is very possessive about that. Yeah. So we have prayer now.
Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.